Folks, so for our last exercise in part design using Part Studio, we're going to be working on step. So we're only going to make this part of like a greater step stool. I'm going to use a couple different features. Rib is one tool that we're going to learn about. Shelling to make something hollow is what we're going to learn about. And then a little bit more draft. And instead of a pattern around a circle, we're going to be looking at linear patterns. So how to copy the same feature across the direction of a surface. Let's hop into it. Our first step here, we need to create a sketch on our top plane, and then we're going to draw this good old box here. So let's hop right in, turn off our front plane, turn off our right plane, Shift S to make a sketch, hop into the top plane, and we are going to make and it's critical, a center point rectangle starting from our origin point. Now, you can hit enter, you'll get that bottom dimension. We also want this height dimension here. And we can make this 275. Let me hit top here. This one, our width, 400. 400. We also need to make a construction line going across our rectangle here. So LQ, just our quick shortcuts there. And we got a construction line diagonally across there. That is step 2. And for step 3, we're just going to extrude this thing. So we're going to make the basic shape of our step. So extrude, we're going to make an isometric extrude. And it's going to be a blind extrusion, nothing fancy, except for we are adding a draft. So our depth is going to be 40 millimeters. Our draft angle is going to be 5 degrees. And that's going the wrong direction, so we're going to flip that inward so you get kind of like the trapezoid prism kind of shape. Now, if we hit the good check, now we're left with the start of our stool, or step, whatever we want to call it. Now, I'm going to just name it step in the parts list. That's our step 4. Step 5 is to actually start rounding some stuff here. So in order to do that, we're going to use a fillet. And what we want to do is select each one of our edges here. If you remember in that initial picture that we saw, these edges have a fillet to them. It's quite a steep radius, so we're going to make it 15 according to step 5. And that begins to start showing like our kind of rounded black step shape. And if we hit check, we are good on that. Now, step 6, we need to actually start drawing again, and we're going to draw on this top surface here. So I'm going to make a sketch, and we are going to click on this top surface, and now we need to actually start drawing something there. So if we fast forward here to step 6, step 7, we are going to use a tool called offset. Again, whoever makes a rap about this tool, you're going to get like an A in my class someday. Someday I'll make a rap if none of my students decide to make a rap. But you do not want to be Offset, the actual rapper. Sorry if he's actually listening to this right now. Not sorry, I guess. Not trying to throw too much shade today. So that was Offset. I just used the Snoopy tool. I clicked on this top surface. I dragged that arrow inward because, again, we want to have an inward offset. And this dimension right here needs to be 5. And that is step 7. Step 8 is we're actually going to do an extrude remove, a blind extrude remove to a depth of 5 millimeters. And we have to make sure that it's also merged with our part, so our step. So I can just go ahead and hit extrude right here. And we want to actually select this smaller shape that we made with the offset. And again, we want to do an extrude remove. We want to tell it to a depth of 5 millimeters and nothing fancy outside of that. So let's type in 5. Let's hit the check, and now we got this nice little lip forming for our step. The next part of all of this is to actually create a shell. So we want to hollow out the bottom of our step. Now, step 9, shell, is a new tool. Basically, we're going to select the surface, and it's going to do something similar to what we did up here, but to the whole volume of our part underneath. So shell is this tool right here, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, shell. It's asking for a face to remove from. we're going to click on this face, and the shell thickness, so this wall thickness right here, we don't want it to be 2.5, we actually want it to be 5. So similar to that offset that we created a moment ago. This tool's like super useful later on if you're designing your own parts and you need to make a hollow void underneath, you don't want to waste a ton of material, that sort of thing. Super useful to, again, start to quote unquote hollow out a part or remove material from a part and create a wall thickness. So that's the shell thickness right there. Once we have this, we can hit check, and that is step 9. Step 10 is we need to create another sketch, and that other sketch is actually going to be up here. Now, if you're following their naming conventions, our sketch 1 is main sketch, our sketch 2 on here is actually sketch 1. So then this sketch that we make in sketch 10 is actually sketch 2. That's just if you want to do what they're doing in the tutorial. Sometimes I miss little things like that because I just kind of chug on through. Now, step 11, where we're at right now, we've created a sketch on, again, this little lip right here. So I've just done that on the face of Extrude 1. Now we need to create a dimension, an angle dimension, and a line dimension. On a line that's kind of just been drawn in space out here. Now, things can kind of sort of go wrong if you don't do this correctly. Our rib sometimes doesn't work if you don't do this correctly. Their hint here is be sure the endpoints of the line are not extended beyond the part. However, the endpoints do not have to be fully defined. So they're talking about these two blue dots right here. Basically, the line should be black because it's at an angle and it's at a distance from our edge of our main sketch, but the points don't actually need to be black. So if we hop into our top view here and I turn my main sketch back on, I'm going to create a line down here in the corner. Okay, it's blue, it hasn't been defined. Now I'm going to hit the dimension tool, and I'm going to create a dimension between the line and this point. I'm going to bring the dimension up here just because it's easier to see. That distance is going to be 22 millimeters. What we also have to do is make that actual degree dimension. So the way to do that, we're still in our dimension tool. We're going to click on this line, and then we're left with the degree dimension, and this needs to be 45. So this looks kind of similar, right? Dimensions are in a different place, but pretty similar to what we got right here for step 11. Step 12 is we actually are going to create a rib. So hopefully this works out. If not, we're going to have to edit some stuff and figure things out, but we're going to use the rib tool. It looks like this, and it's going to start to create that feature of our part where it bumps out. So rib tool, this guy right here, our sketch profile, that should work. Our part is this, and it looks like we just need to start changing this stuff down here. So thickness should be 10 millimeters, normal to sketch plane is what we want, and then these two boxes should be checked. So parallel to sketch plane, nope. Normal to sketch plane, yes. Thickness, 10 millimeters is right. Boom. So it's starting to look very similar to what we got here. Again, rib is like you're starting to create some sort of texture or extended part. Ribs are really good for structure within parts as well. So in this case, it's maybe like the ribbing is good for having it grip your shoes, but also it's adding structure with minimal material. So I'm going to check this, and for step 12, we're going to linear pattern using that critical construction line that we drew in our main sketch. So we're going to be doing a feature pattern, we're going to select our rib feature, and then we're going to have to make sure all these other little critical parts are accounted for when we do our linear pattern. So linear pattern up here, this drop down, we want it to be a feature pattern. We want to copy our rib, and the direction is going to be, it should be this construction line right here. Is it? Is it? Let's see what we get in a second here. Yeah, that should be it. Because we're doing a feature pattern that's along the rib. The distance is going to be 20. The instance count is 23. And then we should just be able to check this, and it's really angry. But it looks like it figured it out. So it may yell at you too, but this looks about right. Let's just go to isometric and see what we got. Yeah, this looks good. And again, feature pattern, rib is what the feature we're patterning. Direction is this construction line. Distance is 20, instance count 23. It figured it out after we did apply per instance, it looks like. So we can check this, and now let's turn off our main sketch for a moment. We have this like ribbed pattern on our step. That is step 13, probably the most complex step in this whole tutorial, because things can go wrong, especially if you don't have that original construction line. So you may just need to go back to your main sketch and make that construction line. Step 14, we're hopping into sketch again. So for this, we need to turn on our right plane, and let's look at it from the right. And then we need to create a line. Now that line is going to be like right about here, and it's 5 millimeters up. So let's hop into a sketch on our right plane, and let's make a line. And I'm just going to draw the line up here. Doesn't matter exactly where it is or what it is just yet. And that line, I'm going to dimension from the line to the bottom of our part, and that dimension needs to be 5. All right. Once we have that, we should be able to move on to our next step. Cool. Next step is going to be slide 14, and we are going to create a new rib underneath of our step. So we're going to use that sketch, we're going to use our part, and then we need to input these few things. So 5 millimeters parallel to sketch plane, extend profiles, and merge ribs. So if we hop underneath, we'll be able to see what goes on in a moment. So again, this was adding structure underneath. Sketch profile, boom. Part is step. Instead of parallel, we want to do normal to sketch plane. Our thickness here, I believe, was 5. And then extending the profile to the part is what we would like to do. Now, let's see. Actually, excuse me, not normal to sketch plane. Parallel. We were right the first time. That's just my bad. Let's check here. Parallel sketch plane. There we go. And that's what we want right there. So now we should be able to check our good rib here, and we can move on to our next step, which is slide 16. We're going to just draft it so it has like a nice little indent to it. So let's hop here. Let's turn off our planes because they're starting to get a little confusing. Let's look at it from there. We're going to use the draft tool again. Draft. Neutral plane is this bottom plane right here. Entities to draft, this side and this side. And the degree is 5 degrees. So let's change our draft angle from 3 to 5, and we should be able to hit check. Now it looks like our draft is again going in the wrong direction. We want it to kind of taper at the bottom. Looks like it's tapering at the top. So if I hop back into draft here, let's reverse it. Actually, no, it was right. Let's look at it from the back here. Yeah, that's right. It's good. It got it the first time. It's just hard to see because it's inside the shape. All right. So slide 16, let's move on to 17. We're going to pattern these like ribs that we've made underneath. So again, a feature pattern, distance is 100, instance count 2. This time we're checking centered. So let's hop on back and we'll start to do this. So we want a linear pattern similar to what we did on the top. It's a feature pattern because we're copying over the rib and the draft we just did. Boom, boom. The direction, I believe we're going to be using this line. And instance count is 2. We just want to make it centered, okay? And that means that we have 2 on either side of the part, or the rib we just made. Distance, I believe this was 100. Ooh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yep, it's 100, and we should be able to hit check, and we got it. So Step 17, 18, we're making a sketch, and I think we're going to start cutting through some stuff in a minute, but I forget. We'll hop back over. We're going to create a sketch, so Shift S. We're making that sketch on our center rib, so on the bottom face of our center rib. And then in step 19, we're actually going to look at our part from the bottom, and we're going to draw a couple lines. Now, what it asks for us to do is make a construction line, and the construction line needs to be coincident with our origin. So I need to make a line. I'm just going to mouse over the origin. I'm going to get that yellow dashed line and then create a line straight across here. And then we're going to make two actual lines. So boom, boom. Doesn't matter where they are just right now, because what we're going to do is we are going to use symmetric constraint to make these two lines symmetric from our construction line. So equally distant. Boom, boom. Once we have these two lines, we can check off our sketch, and that is step 19. Step 20, we're going to create a couple more ribs. So we're going to use sketch 4. We're going to merge it with our step part. Normal to sketch plane, 2 checkboxes, thickness of 5. So let's make our rib, boom, boom, part, step. This right here, parallel, looks okay. 5 there. Is it parallel? No, it's normal this time. I'm getting all mixed up here, guys. We'll make it through, folks. So extend profiles to part, and it looks like we actually want to go a little bit farther, and I think that's just because my lines aren't actually long enough. So let's go back to sketch 4, and we'll see what happens when we extend a little bit farther out here. And I did also forget like a critical piece of this, which is this needs to be dimensioned according to step 19, I believe, to 100. So let's see what we get right now. If I hit check here, boom, now it's looking a little bit more like it. So make sure your dots are across the ribs that we made previously. Also dimension them to 100, just because I was moving a little too fast there. So these dots, the endpoints, need to be out here, and then dimension 100. Mr. K messes things up too, folks. We're going to do another set of drafting. We're going to make sure everything has a nice taper to it. So we are going to click on draft, or actually it's rib, excuse me. We want to click on draft. Our neutral plane is this plane right here, and then again our entities to draft. It's going to be clicking a lot of different faces, all of the faces on this side, now all the faces on this side, and then we will be in business. I think the degree is 5 degrees again. Let's just double check, and we are good to go for step 21. Next, I think we're actually going to start cutting some stuff out. So we're going to make a sketch on this plane here on the right-hand side. So hop back into isometric view right here. Let's make a sketch on this plane. And if we go to step 23, we need to start making some points. So the points are going to be 50 from, this first point's going to be 50 from the edge. It's going to be 20 up. And then this point is vertical to the midpoint of this edge here. So let's see what we can get in a moment. This should be the midpoint because that's our origin point. Let's make a point just vertical of our midpoint. Let's also make a point out here because these two are on the same area there. And what we need to do is plug in this 50 and this 20 right here. So let's go ahead and get this 50. That's good. And let's go ahead and get this as 20. And then just to double check, let's delete this. Let's make these 2 points horizontal to each other. if it's throwing an error right here, let's delete this constraint and let's make these two vertically constrained. There we go. I'm going to uncheck show constraints there. If you have any issues, I would suggest just redrawing your point out here in space and then starting to throw some constraints. Again, these two should be vertically constrained, these two should be horizontally constrained. So if it throws any errors, you can do show constraints and delete constraints and redo stuff, or just redraw the darn points if you want. So what's our next step here? Accept the sketch, pop a couple holes. So let's go ahead and we'll be looking at sketch 24 now, or excuse me, step 24. I'm going to make a hole on this point and this point. And it's going to be a simple hole, nothing special about it. No, we actually want to go to a certain depth, so we're going to make it blind. Our standard, we actually want an ISO hole. So ISO clearance M10. So again, that's just a specific size hole. Fit, normal, looks fine. This depth right here, we actually only want it to go to 5. Are we starting from the sketch plane? No. But that looks decent. Let's see here. Yeah, that looks fine. And what we're going to do in our next step is we're actually just going to mirror that right on over. So we should want to turn on the right plane, and we're going to select the right plane in a moment, whichever you choose to do. We're going to use mirror, we're going to do a feature mirror, and we want to mirror our holes. What's our mirror plane? You should be able to select the right plane here, and then on the other side our holes pop up. 26, we're selecting the right plane as a sketch plane, so again we do need to turn on the right plane. I'm going to hop into isometric so I can actually see the thing. Sketch, let's click on right plane. And what are we doing for step 27? We're actually starting to draw some complex shapes in here. We're going to draw, it looks like a line, an arc, and a line. So kind of this like U shape, upside down U shape, this arch. So let's hop in here, and I'm going to look at my right plane. And I'm going to draw a line, just kind of out here somewhere. Nowhere special right now. Hopefully this is about right. Yeah, that's good for now. I just didn't want to interact with our rib that we made a second ago. Let's hop back right here, hit escape. I'm going to draw a second line. And then we need a 3-point arc. Boom, boom, boom. And let's dimension this thing. Dimension this needs to be 12. Dimension the distance from this point to this point needs to be 50. Ooh, that didn't like that. Let's dimension the distance between this and this first and see what we get. So this should be 15, and this, if it doesn't like 50, there we go, is good. Now this is a little bit lower than this. I don't like that. It's not in the tutorial. They're horizontal, so let's just make these two horizontally constrained, and boom goes the dynamite. There we go. We got a kind of archway. Now, if we hit extrude, and we can just go straight into extrude removing this thing. If we look underneath, oh, you know what I missed? I got to draw a line connecting these two here. Let's look here. Boom, boom, because we need to actually make like a closed surface or plane. Let's hit extrude. And now we have that shape selected because we went right into an extrude. We're going to do extrude remove. And we're going to tell it to go through everything. We do also want a second end position, and we're going to tell it to go through all again, so we hit both sides of the step. If we hit the check here, we are left with basically like a step with the area that kind of mounts on the pole, just so it's like it mounts to the structure. These parts here probably link up to the brackets that have our diagonal part as well. That is step 28. 29, we're setting the material to nylon, and 30, you can guess the mass properties. So again, pretty complex step here. We can do sign material. This one's a little bit easier, nylon, if you can spell it right. Let me know if you run into any issues. Again, the most critical part in the beginning is to draw this construction line. You may not realize that you need to do that in the beginning. And then just be careful about when you actually, just as I did, get to the parts where you're doing like a rib, you're doing features and then linear patterns. You just gotta be careful of what you're selecting. Let me know if you have any issues, and I'm here to help. Feel free to throw something in the comments if you notice I did something wrong, that sort of thing. That's step, and that completes part design using Part Studios. Congrats. We will move on to multi-part studios very shortly, and I will see you there. Alrighty, take care.